Good afternoon from Philadelphia. Frank here with another episode of UFO News Network Sunday. We are ready to go with a fabulous show, so let me bring in my co-host, Chant Hanna, to introduce the panel for today. Hello, Chant.
Hello, Frank. We have a wonderful panel today. We have Phoenix MUFON team with us. We have Jim Mann, director of Phoenix MUFON, Stacey, Wright, who is the assistant director of Phoenix MUFON. We have Shane Hurd, who is a MUFON field investigator with the Phoenix chapter. He's a podcaster with Rogue Planet TV, a soon-to-be-published author of UAP What Is It?, A Beginner's Guide to Studying UFOs, and a general sci-fi geek. We also have with us Kristine. Wulf has been an Arizona field investigator for 4+ years. We also have, I believe it's Marianne. Let me go ahead and get that information here. She's been with us, Phoenix MUFON, for 4 years, and with MUFON for 5 years. And we also have another person that I'm going to bring on with us. Her name is Rosa. Robles, I believe, is her name. And thank you very much, everybody, for coming on. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty. We appreciate your coming on the show with us today. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Doing great.
Doing great.
Fantastic. We want to know just a little bit about your team, by the way. If you don't mind, I wanted to give a little bit better introduction regarding Phoenix MUFON. Can you please tell us a little bit of history regarding Phoenix MUFON and some of the folks that we have on with us today?
Well, Phoenix MUFON has been around for about 12 years now, and Jim and I started this back in 2007. And we've got quite a great group, if I do say so myself. We have 16 field investigators right now, and they work together as just a crack team that takes on all kinds of things that happen throughout this state. We actually get about 300 cases a year, so they're very busy people. And we really just respect the heck out of them because they're very well guided by our chief investigator, Dennis Freyermuth, and he's a master at what he does. And so we're just really, everyone in the group, we all have a lot of fun doing it.
Do you think that you can have Marianne come on and say hello to us, please?
Hi, Chant and Frank. How are you today?
Doing good,
It's so
Marianne.
nice to
How are
have
you? Nice talking to you.
I'm wonderful. Thank
Great.
you very much for having us on today.
Thank you. And then Jim, is he there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. How are you?
Good.
Good. Now, I'll be bringing on Rosa Robles, I believe is her name. She should be coming on in a moment. I did want to, while we're bringing her on, however, go ahead and start off with a really very serious topic that's greatly important to all of us, and that is that President Trump was asked by Tucker Carlson about the UFO topic, and he gave a very interesting answer. Does anybody want to chime in on that topic?
I think the president gave the answer he was qualified to give, and I'm sure he knows more than what he told Tucker. Okay, but again, these things that's happening with the event on the Nimitz and the USS Nimitz, that's got to be somewhat classified, and so I think that politically, any leader would have to move forward very carefully on this. There's a lot of visibility with Tucker Carlson. He's viewed by millions, and a lot of us here in the UFO community, certainly we were waiting to see exactly what he would say. And I think he said pretty much what we thought he would say. I think it's kind of a pipe dream if we think the President of the United States, regardless of who it is just going to come right out and admit that this phenomena has been going on for years, and that the government has had visibility of this phenomena, and that they're hiding it or whatever. So I think we just got to take what President Trump said for face value, and then he just didn't really want to talk about it at that point because probably or perhaps he wasn't quite filled in. I don't know, but there certainly was a reason why he held back, and I don't think that we should disrespect that. I think that disclosure is coming about very quickly, very rapidly. We're seeing new people that are Phoenix MUFON meetings because of all of this. And so I'm looking forward to some really cool things happening in the next few months.
Yeah, the president said some very nice things about the pilots, that he really believes them. He didn't. He was a little skeptical in general, but said nice things about the witnesses. So that's got to be viewed as a positive.
Absolutely, and I agreed with that wholeheartedly. He didn't deny anything. He didn't back down. He didn't make it sound silly by any fashion, and he supported our pilots. These are Top Gun pilots. When you're a commander of an F-18 Hornet, and you're up there and you've got a squad that you're training, and something like this happens, yeah, you're flying a multi-million-dollar aircraft, and you're one of the front lines of American military defense, and so there's no nonsense going on here. And I think that the quick little interview with Tucker Carlson was about what I expected.
Fantastic. I also wanted to actually ask Stacey, Wright, and Marianne, Robb about this topic. How do you all feel about President Trump having been asked by Tucker Carlson about the UFO topic? What are your insights on that?
Well, I think it's a very legitimate question, and I agree with Jim in that he only can say what he can say. He does spill a lot of beans on a lot of nonsensical stuff out there, but on this subject, I think they have to be pretty guarded, and I think he just simply does not want to talk about it. So he basically said so.
It's the second time in a few weeks that he was asked, because he did an interview with George Stephanopoulos a few weeks before that, and basically the same thing, although he seemed a little friendlier to the question when it came from Stephanopoulos, and that he told George that he would be the first to know if he finds out anything more. And Carlson, who's, let's face it, kind of a media friend of the president, didn't seem to get as good an answer as Stephanopoulos did. Wonder if anybody had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe, this is Shane here, that things are heating up on the topic, and it's becoming more sensitive as we see more disclosure coming, and it has to be in a measured and controlled way. So I had that same thought, Frank, where he was a little more tight-lipped with Tucker, whom I would expect the opposite, because as you mentioned, they kind of have that.
Because that interview came about the night of the final episode of the Unidentified show, which we're going to be talking about a good bit more. And I think a lot of folks were kind of excited. There was sort of a false little rumor floating around that he was going to really spill the beans and talk about a lot more. As it turned out, that didn't happen. But we all watched anyway, because even the most obscure mention by a president about the UFO stuff, I mean, we're all going to be all over it. So it really didn't matter. We were going to watch anyway. But I did think the whole exchange was really interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's meaningful, right? Anytime a president, will make a comment, you do have to listen to that. So I appreciated it.
Yes, that is important.
And this thing could go political so fast. And regardless of who's in the White House, when something of this impact hits the general public, it's going to be politicized very, very quickly.
That's a great point.
Head will be shaking. You just know it is. And,
yes.
And when you're President Trump, regardless of who likes him or who doesn't like him, he's in a position where he's walking on eggshells when it comes to what's going on with UFO and classified information.
Agreed, 100%. And I would like the opportunity to ask Marianne, Robb, also Kristine, Wulf, and field investigator Rosa Robles, who's on with us today regarding this topic. How do you feel about President Trump having been asked about the UFO topic twice now by two different interviewers?
This is Chris here. I think that he came across really well, in an unusual fashion for him, anyways. And I just feel that he he's only allowed to say so much, and there's only so much that everybody knows anyways. So I think he's open to it, and I think he's just going to have to. We're all just going to have to wait to see just what happens. So I was
great.
happy with it.
Wonderful. And Marianne, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll be honest, I did not hear after the last episode of just Unidentified, I did not hear the interview with President Trump and Tucker Carlson. I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't hear the actual interview that was going on. But with Jim, Stacey, Kristine, and Shane, everything that they've said, 100% is, I think there's going to be disclosures coming. The television show Identified really helped that out tremendously. People are coming forward. However, Trump can't just come out and say, oh, yeah, this is all going on. Every president has been asked the same question about the UFO phenomenon. And have we been visited? And Trump, I think, did a great job answering what he could, but there's no way he's going to be able to answer that question just right out in the open. And I'm the same way. It's great he believed in and agreed with the pilots. I think it's awesome that the pilots that came forward in the show, disclosure is going to come slowly. And I think President Trump, again, did a great job in what he could say.
Thank you very much for that insight. And Rosa, and by the way, I'll be asking another question right after this, Frank. I just wanted to remind you of that.
Before you change subjects, because I do want to follow up.
Yeah, okay, that sounds good. I'll be sure to touch base with you on that. Rosa, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and also touching on this topic?
Well, my name is Rosa Robles. I'm a relatively new investigator and very, very excited to be on board. One of my mentors there is Marianne. I agree with her. I unfortunately didn't get to see the interview with Trump. I usually catch everything he says, and at this time I didn't catch that. But I do agree with her. There's not much that they can say, and I believe that there isn't that much that they know or can divulge. So, but then again, like I said, I'm glad to be on board. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, Jim, you had mentioned this issue getting political very quickly. And on one hand, I agree with you, but on the other hand, I'm having a tough time imagining how that is going to happen. I don't see any political candidates jumping into this. Apparently, Andrew Yang on the Democrat side has been briefed when he was in Nevada. He is apparently one of the candidates who's been briefed on the issue and knows a little bit more about it maybe than some others. But I can't see the candidates jumping in on this really quick. Is it going to take that? Is it going to take just more questions from the press? What do you think it's going to take to get this issue discussed a little bit more openly?
Well, you guys know that anybody, unless you've been living under a rock, you know that whether you like President Trump or not, he has probably been under the gun more than any president in my lifetime, and I'm 66 years old. I've never seen a president hammered so badly by the press as this president. I've seen a lot of administrations come and go. If President Trump gets out there and starts talking about UFOs, oh my God, that's going to create a firestorm for him, and he knows it, along with everything else. Now, Senator Harry Reid is being very verbal about all this, and good for him, okay? We need more senators to talk about it. If you guys remember back I think it was the governor of New Mexico who wanted to bring up the issue of UFOs because he had Roswell right there in his own state. They just about crucified that man on TV. And so he backed out of the election. And so these are very, very touchy subjects for the leader of this country to start talking about UFOs because there's a lot at stake here. Number one, this phenomenon has been going on 60 or 70 years, and there's accountability, okay? So if Trump comes right out and starts talking about UFOs, the accountability is right behind it of why all the secrecy. What about all these people that were lied to? What about this? What about that? So this could go political extremely fast. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't already, simply because Tucker even asked him that question. Thankfully, there were a lot of other issues that were more visible to the general public and the news media that they just kind of just skirted right on past the whole UFO thing. Yeah, you know, these are crazy times we're living in. We all know that. Yeah, for disclosure to come about, this is a really good first step, if you want to call it a first step. But this is disclosure. I mean, this is probably about as good as it's going to get when our naval forces and our naval people, our Top Gun pilots, are coming forward, talking about it. The question is posed to the President of the United States on national TV. This is disclosure, folks. I mean, what it's going to be like a year from now, I have no idea. And is it going to mean anything for the 2020 elections? I imagine it will have some impact. I don't know how much, but that's what I'm guessing at this point.
All salient points. Go ahead.
This is Chris. You know, all this stuff has been eking out. You know, the Navy stuff and all that has been on. And I'm wondering, to me, when I hear this stuff coming on and what's going on, and I'm thinking this is a big deal. This is it. You know, this is really going to make a difference to the world. And I'm wondering, I'm looking around like, did I just hear that? Am I the only one that heard it? It's like, where is everybody? You know, it's like, I must be just myself. Because I'm thinking it's a big deal and it means something, but it's like the world's really doesn't seem to be paying a whole lot of attention.
You're right about that. You're right about that.
Go ahead.
No, that's just what I was going to say. You know, it's just that I'm finding it kind of fascinating. Either the world has gotten kind of accustomed to this and we're making a bigger deal out of it than it really is in regards to what would happen if it was disclosed. You know, I don't know. I just find it kind of strange. That's one of my observations.
Yes, that actually happened regarding the apathy or the level of non-responsiveness regarding the topic we're talking about here. When on December 16th, 2017, Glowing Auras and Black Money, that article came out by Helen Cooper, Ralph Blumenthal, and Leslie Kean. It came out on a Saturday. And Frank, you and I have talked many times about how there was a real lack of response to this mind-blowing article about disclosure regarding Pentagon UFO-run program for about 5 years, maybe slightly more. Anybody want to chime in on that topic?
Yeah, I'll jump in. You know what I think is happening? Oh, go ahead. Hello. Okay, well, yeah, I'll finish. I'll finish my point then. What I think is happening is there are only so many folks out there who are wildly into UFOs like we are. Excuse me. So that's a pretty limited audience. But what I think there is a lot of people who maybe who are sort of open to it. I think there's a big chunk of the population that is open to it and interested in hearing more. But honestly, these little drips and drops that we hear here and there, a question gets asked of Trump in one interview, then another question in another. That's not the kind of thing that's going to get the entire country or the entire world's attention. It'll take a little bit more than that. But there are a lot of people who are very open to this subject, but they literally don't even realize what's going on with all this heightened attention that the UFO stuff has gotten over the last, year and a half plus, almost 2 years now.
Right. Now, Trump apparently was briefed regarding the UFO topic. I don't know why this is so surprising, however, because I happen to agree with a few of our panelists that I think that just about every president within the last 60 or 70 years has been briefed on this topic, because anything that's potentially in our skies, traversing our skies, would be considered a possible threat. So it just makes sense to me that any president would be briefed on this topic. Are there any thoughts that anybody wants to share on this topic?
Yeah, just imagine the responsibility that goes along with this. We discover that there's a technology out there that's wildly in advance of anything that we have in the skies. And here we have confirmation. All of a sudden, we have confirmation. And the confirmation is coming from our Naval Department. And how do we handle that in a responsible manner? Because this technology represents forms of energy that we have no idea how it works. And how is that going to impact the fossil fuel industry, or the all the different industries, and all the economy of the world rotates on the oil industry, basically, that and the semiconductor industry. But all of a sudden, we've got this technology that's way in advance of that. So what is the responsible thing to do when we bring it forward to the general public and we start announcing this? I'm not saying that panic is going to happen, but a new form of energy that would put fossil fuels out of business is also going to put billions and billions of dollars out of business, and millions of people. So there's a responsible way to do this. And I'm not the person making the decisions, and I'm glad I'm not. But I think that Nick Pope said it, disclosure with a small d, and little steps at a time. And I think that we're already seeing, in the time that I've been in MUFON in 12 years, you see more programs on TV now. We see bigger numbers at the conferences. We see more conferences. And so, yeah, disclosure's coming. And it's with a small d, but we have to get into the consciousness of the general public. I don't think we're going to get a big announcement coming out of the White House.
Okay, and going on along the same topic I brought up just a few minutes before, Shane, my question to you is, can you tell me why nobody seems to care in the general public as much as we would hope they would regarding things like glowing auras and black money, that article by Leslie Kean and the two other authors of it, and then the fact that Trump has been involved in this topic a few times with two different interviewers? Oh, I guess maybe our hopes too high, the UFO community? What's going on there?
Yeah, I think, along with what Jim was saying is, disclosure has to happen in a careful way. Now, you think of it from the perspective of a government. There's a wonderful political science paper written by two gentlemen by the name of Duval and Wendt called UFOs and Sovereignty. And they looked at the perspective of if there were, another more powerful force that presented itself, that it would be, in fact, a threat to every nation on Earth, because the forms of government on this earth are nations. They're separate borders. They have local issues. And they depend on those things to stay in power. And again, if some of the things like Jim mentioned were to come to fruition with the advancement of these others, a global energy, maybe it would impact, global religion, and it would have an effect on global government. And so, it's a hypersensitive issue, and I think this is where it can go political, because it is in fact a threat to national sovereignty. However, the general public, probably do not see it from that point of view. And I think the reason I don't think it's apathy. I think it's the fact is that we still are guided by what happens in our daily lives. So let's just take the example of school shootings. When those things first happened, it was as shocking as could be. Our whole nation was, reacting to that. And but then over the years where there's, 100, 200 of these a year, they get in the news cycle. We feel bad, for a week or two, but then, the reality for each of us is that, we have to go to work, we have to pay our bills, we have to take the kids to school, we have to pay our mortgage. Those are the things that dominates the life of an individual. And so, and yes, there's a lot of interest out there. And I'll just throw in, I don't know if you want to talk about it more later, but this whole issue of hey, let's storm Area 51.
We'll be talking about that later. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll just say at this point, the law of unintended consequences is ever present, right? And so just imagine, something of that nature, but politically oriented, springing out of nowhere and talking about the president's reaction or our nation's reaction. You just never know. I mean, this is it's a delicate thing that has to be handled in a delicate way. And even if it is, there's going to be things that no one anticipated. So, it's fragile. Disclosure is fragile, but there's no doubt about it. It's happening. We're in the throes of it. And I think in general, it's a good thing. But people just need to recognize the ones that are controlling disclosure are the ones that are most at threat from it. So they're going to do it their way in their timeline to mitigate all those things Jim talked about, like responsibility for the last 70 years, et cetera.
Well, Shane, the reason for all this, the reason why disclosure is such a delicate thing is because ET themselves are maintaining this kind of ambiguous profile out there where, now you see us, now you don't, maybe we're here, maybe we're not. There are a lot of people who can credibly say, look, UFOs are not ET. This is silliness, and they can do it because they can get away with it because there is no unambiguous ET presence.
Yeah, absolutely, and really, that is the actual question we should all be asking. But it's too scary, and it's too soon to contemplate that, right? So first, we've got to establish, the what, the when, and the where, and that's easy. That comes with data, right? That's where we're at right now. But that's going to lead to, once we get a handle on that, then it's going to lead to who, and then ultimately why. And those are the most frightening things and the most delicate things.
I've heard people say, and I'm going to be asking other folks on our panel who have not had the opportunity to really talk very much about this interesting topic, and that is, I've heard a lot of folks in the UFO community argue over this topic. That being that people are afraid for the government to disclose anything about the UFO topic. And then there's the camp that says, I'm not a baby. If the government can handle disclosure, I can too. If the government knows about the UFO, meaning really the ET topic, and they have information on it, well, they're humans just like I am, so I can too. What are your thoughts on that, Marianne, Stacey, Rosa, Robles, and Chris?
This is Marianne. My thing on the disclosure, the black money, people, you're saying that people are not listening, they're not getting upset, or they're not voicing their opinions. My thought on that is that the citizens, the people go, hey, we already knew. We knew you were doing probably something with the UFO community. We knew that you were putting up all this money for programs to look at the UFOs, this black money. It's like, we already knew that you were probably already doing that. Hey, we're just happy you're finally coming out and telling us, disclosing that, yes, we did have programs where we're using black money and we were testing different technologies. And I just think people are like, well, it's about time you came out. We know you probably were already doing it, and thank you for finally coming out and telling us. I don't think it's going to be an uproar. I'm just thinking that they're really, at least me as a citizen also, is that finally you're coming out and telling us, yes, you are doing these programs. That's just my thought on that.
Yeah.
And then this is Stacey. So, there's also been, watching the show Unidentified, there was Brian Bender from Politico, the journalist there, has reported a lot of really cool stuff, along with George Knapp. And it all leads up to that there is a problem internally, that there's blinders within the government. A lot of resistance, they said, within the Pentagon from a lot of senior people there who are very Christian. They thought that looking into this kind of stuff was voodoo and it was dangerous, and they didn't want anyone looking into it. And Lou Elizondo was also told to stop because it was a demonic presence. So that's a really big deal when you know that it's coming from the state houses that way. And George Knapp also corroborated, that it's considered the paranormal and the supernatural. It's a huge stigma. UFOs, they all think, is inviting Satan into your lives. So when you've got that kind of pressure coming from some of these real bigwigs there, how do you fight that? That's a big deal.
That is a big deal. That's a very important point, too. Thank you, Stacey and Marianne, for your insight.
Yeah, I think a lot of that came from the head of the program before Elizondo, and that was a gentleman named Dr. Lakatsky, who was running the program before him, and his interest in the Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon. I think that's largely where a lot of that pushback came from, that there were some folks who really didn't like that idea in particular. I'm not as sure that the UFO thing in general is viewed quite the same way. I've not heard that, but we'll see how that plays out as it goes along.
Would you like to go ahead and start asking folks about the Unidentified series?
Yeah, what did we all think about that? 6 shows, and I have to admit, it's a pretty high bar for me to be satisfied with a UFO program, and I got to tell you, I think that this one exceeded my expectations by quite a bit. What did everyone else think of the show?
This is Chris. I thought it was I think it's great. I love the way the way they approached the whole thing. I mean, I totally believe that these guys, it's real. I mean, and they're going about it and presenting it in such a professional fashion. I just, unlike anything I've ever seen, really, regarding, the subject. So I just think it's really good. I encourage a lot of people to watch it at work who are, they're kind of just new to the subject. They don't think about it very much and stuff. So I've turned on a lot of people where I work to looking at it. They've really enjoyed it and even have been recording it and stuff. So I've got more people in the pocket, I guess, and hopefully they'll spread too. So
it was a good recruiting tool for you.
Yeah. If I was a recruit one, this would be the one that I think it's the number one in regards to the subject. I mean, at this point in where it's at with this disclosure coming down and all that. So,
thank you so much, Chris. I wanted to mention something kind of important about this series, just for our listeners, and that is the first episode came out on May 31st of this year. It was called The UFO Insiders. The second one was Raining UFO. Another, The Pattern Revealed. The UFO Fleet was the next one. The fifth one was The Atomic Connection. And the last one was The Revelation. There's been 6 episodes so far. Would anybody else like to tell us how they feel about this Unidentified series, their review of it?
Chat, this is Marianne. What I'd like to say is, first of all, I've been a police officer now for over 31 years here in Arizona and continuing. And one of the biggest things that I look at is during an interview, interrogation, or anything like that is body language, speech, and eye movement, everything when it comes to somebody telling me a story or telling me what happened to them in police work. Well, when I started watching this program, Unidentified, that's one thing I looked at all the pilots, when they did their interviews, from the radar techs to one of the biggest things that I thought was amazing are the fishermen down in Mexico. Everyone that has ever been interviewed through the whole program, I have never seen any type of deceptive body language, eye movement, the speech, was just amazing. And I was really looking for, okay, is somebody just kind of blowing smoke to us, is making up stories? And I never saw any of that in any of the witnesses that Lou Elizondo interviewed. It was amazing. And that's one of the biggest things. And what was cool is that I heard that pretty much every episode was done on one take. So they don't have time to tell people what to say, how to say it, and do 2 or 3 different takes. They did one take. And it was amazing. You could tell that they were not being deceptive. These were true stories from all of the witnesses that were involved.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for that. Would anybody else like to chime in, like Rosa for one? And then perhaps we could hear from Stacey and everybody else on this.
All I can say is that finally, Lord, finally, I think that these people feel like they can come out and speak, because I don't believe that they'll be as ostracized now that we're talking about it more than back in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So I'm thinking they're feeling a little bit safer to be able to come forward and be the whistleblowers. And I'm sure that maybe behind the scenes, there's a little bit of the slapping of the wrist. But all I can say is that I believe they're just feeling like there's more. There's just more. And the data is just out there. How can they? But thanks anyway.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And Shane, how do you feel about the Unidentified series?
Yeah, I thought it was very well done. That it had an air of credibility about it. And as far as hitting their target goal of course, educating the general public, easing them into the topic, they were also trying to reach Congress and to work within the political boundaries to make this a topic that they would look at and consider. And I'm sure the ultimate goal is to, generate some kind of interest in funding programs for further study and that sort of thing. So I think on both those levels, they hit a home run with it. And I really appreciated some of the cast and the individuals associated with TTSA. So like Chris Mellon, I just love that guy. I find him very credible. I like listening to his voice. Steve Justice was another. He didn't really appear much until maybe like the 4th episode, but when he did, I had made some notes about that, and I looked back at my notes and I said, that's one serious dude. The way he comes off, and that guy knows stuff, but he's very professional in the way he carries himself out. And then the whole thought process, they were very careful to limit. They didn't completely eliminate, but limit, speculation. And you have to speculate to some degree. So I thought they stayed within the boundaries on that helped, maintain that credibility. So, I thought this was different than any other UFO show that's ever been on. And I think it came at the right time at the right place.
I agree with
they
you.
left the wild speculation to us, which was great. We can do that now.
Right.
Yeah.
Stacey, how do you feel about this show? Do you feel it's different than any other show? And what is your review of the Unidentified?
I love it. Love it. Love it. I think that it's the best thing that's ever been on. That's the most legitimate cast of characters that they could ever have gathered up. And I'm with Shane there. Chris Mellon is, you watch that guy and it's like, that is pure professionalism right there. And Lou is doing a great job of interviewing. He's finding the facts out. You can just tell the guy is totally serious on this. Steve Justice is completely professional. It's just a real great cast of characters for getting done what they need to get done. And they're digging and they're doing the hard work, and they are the boots on the ground on this thing, and they're just doing a great job. So I'm loving it.
Yeah.
So you guys in MUFON Phoenix, Jim and Stacey, have brought in a lot of guests and have gotten some scoops. You had George Knapp out there the early part of the year, and he brought a little bit of news that he was able to share for the first time with you guys. Why don't you talk about that, talk about the guests that you bring out, and tell us if you've heard any behind-the-scenes stuff on where all this is going to go down the road.
Well, I don't. This is Jim. I don't. This stuff is so new that nothing has really been addressed from the platform really that much yet. But here's an amazing thing you might want to think about. We've always assumed that our ET and our UFO people are from outer space, right? But unidentified, they're all coming up out of the ocean, okay? So perhaps our extraterrestrials are not quite so extraterrestrial. Maybe they're more co-indigenous to our planet here, and maybe they're existing under the oceans. I don't know, but it certainly leaves us with a kind of a cool question. Is maybe we're looking at USOs, unidentified submerged objects, coming up out of. So maybe they're not from Zeta Reticuli. Maybe they're from the Marianas Trench or something.
Right? Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. Thank you so much for bringing up that important point. That these ET civilizations may have actually been here all along, or they are visiting from other areas, from unknown universes, galaxies, and they're residing under the water. It's really a very fascinating topic that is covered extensively in ufology, thank goodness. I wanted to ask everybody about the Italian UFO. Frank, can you bring up that topic?
Yeah, there was a case over in Italy a number of years back that involved, they talked about it during the 6th episode, where there were some fires going on, which don't seem to be connected to the UFOs, but they were going on at about the same time as the UFO, and there was a mishap with a helicopter. So they talked about that case when they'd gone over to Italy, that the Italians presented them with this case as if it's one of their hotter cases. There's been a little bit of pushback on that maybe the case isn't quite so hot, but that did come out, and that was a new case that we hadn't heard too much about here in the States. So that was kind of interesting. And it was interesting that they were going over to Italy and trying to get some international cooperation on this issue. So that was a very interesting segment of the show that they ran. I think it was the last episode, the very last episode where they did that.
Did anybody watch that last episode?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is Chris. Yeah, I watched it and I thought it was, pretty interesting, and I got a kick out of the Italian trying to bargain with Lou.
Well, we had heard through the back channels before the show came on that they had planned this kind of European swing where they were looking to get some other countries involved, but the Italians were the only one who sort of went for their deal, which was basically tell us what you know, but we can't tell you any of our classified stuff, which is all we know. So that's that was kind of played out on we'd gotten some word back channel, and that was kind of played out on the show itself. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I got a kick out of the way Lou's reaction when they said that was kind of funny. Oh yeah, but I can't, Love to, but sorry.
But they did turn over some information about the case, and also they turned over quite a database, apparently, of everything that they had going back to, it was either the very early 1900s or the late 1800s, of literally everything that they had database. So that was a pretty nice gift. And Shane, you were talking a little earlier about data. Data is great, but the government collects the best of it, and we don't have access to any of it. How are we going to figure out exactly how frequent these kind of legitimate ET cases are without the data? And I don't think we're going to get any of it anytime soon.
Yeah, that's obviously the concern. I mean, even with little d disclosure, we're as a public are only going to be privy to so much. I think, Chant, you had mentioned earlier that there certainly has to be top secret element to even the Nimitz case and any of those that are going on. There's got to be data that is not made known. So, we do have to take that into consideration, that we only know part of the story. We may only know part of the story, and we'll just have to work with what we got.
We have another guest on the line, by the way, who's barking in the background. Who is that?
I'm sorry, that's Levi. Levi, a husky.
Tell him we said hello.
I'm gonna go banish him right now.
We love
GTB.
dogs. By the way, we love them. Okay, great. Also, if you don't mind, Frank, I wanted to bring up an interesting topic we brought up on another show, and that is that Richard Doty, was actually brought up on the Unidentified series. Can you please let us know in what manner he was?
Basically, Elizondo seemed to take a little bit of umbrage that he had been compared with Doty, and made quite the point that he's not Rick Doty, and they didn't go out and try to interview Rick Doty. They grabbed a couple of scenes from a movie called Mirage Men, which was a documentary where Doty has talked a little bit in the past about his deeds, and we discussed this at length when we had Alejandro on and Karen talking about the UFO Congress. We had them on and talked a little bit about it. He went into Alejandro went into some detail about Doty. He is not a popular guy in some UFO circles, yet in others it seems like everything that he has to say, no matter how fictional it likely is, that they just take his word as gospel. And Shane, I know from past conversations you're not a big fan of the guy.
Yeah. No, I'm not really. But, it's so hard. This whole ufology in general, we're always just scrambling for any kind of credibility, right? As a group and as an individual, I'm sure none of us like to be deceived. It's just, not right and not cool. And, he made not only a career of it as, an Ofosi guy, which, okay, it's your job, you can do, you're authorized to deceive, basically, but there's limits to that. There's still, a sense of responsibility as an individual human being. And I just, I look back at that case, and this is the Paul Benowitz case, and what happened to that man as a result of their basically toying with him and his mind and everything, that, that's just reprehensible. And I just, the man has been an enemy of ufology from the beginning, and having him, come about with open arms and, welcoming it. I mean, you're dancing with the devil there. So
he's being portrayed in some circles as a whistleblower and a hero. I mean, I don't get that.
Yeah. No, I'm not a big fan, and I could see why Lou really, shuddered at the thought of being compared to him, because, I don't care who you are in whatever field, whatever, you can still have a measure of personal integrity, and I don't see it in that.
I thought it was a real surprise. I was glad to see it. Were you surprised when they went there? I mean, I was.
Yeah, I was very surprised, and I don't know if that was because of the ascendancy of Doty in the UFO community. I wouldn't think they would care, but if there were people out there making that comparison, then that was really an attack on the credibility of TTSA, and I think it's right that they did address it. So, it was kind of left field, but if that's what the intent was, then yeah, I think they needed to do it, and they did.
And just one last point about Doty. There was one other fellow who took some serious umbrage with being compared with Doty that I noticed, and that not quite as high profile. He didn't do it on a national TV show. He did it on Grant Cameron's Facebook page, but that was Ron Pandolfi, which I think is pretty interesting. That drew him out of the woodwork to make a comment, and he didn't like that comparison one bit.
Yeah.
Jim Mann brought up some really fascinating points that were very valid regarding pilots coming forward. There was a female pilot that came forward. Would anybody like to touch on that topic?
I want to see more of her. I mean, she's got some very interesting information, and she was there right from the beginning, and I just have a feeling she's got a lot more to say, and I hope that they bring her out a little bit more. She's truly hiding right now, but I'm just hoping that maybe if we have another season coming up of this, that we get to see and hear more from her, because she was right there, and she's got another angle on this, and it's almost an emotional angle on what she was feeling. I mean, she talks about how she can see that it was going to be a tragedy happening right in front of her eyes, perhaps. And, there's just kind of a different angle coming from her. So I'd really like to hear more from her. I hope they bring her on again in the next season.
I was really surprised we saw as much of her as we did. I did not see that coming at all, and that was quite a coup for them. I was very surprised because the word had always been, look, she was pretty shook up by the whole incident umpteen years ago, and she is never going to come forward. And she did a lot more than I ever thought she would, so I was very pleased to see that. That was one of the things about the show that really jumped out at me.
I've noticed in the UFO community, when people come forward with personal testimony to share, sometimes they're hailed as heroes, and other times the exact opposite of that. Why is that?
Well, I think, this is Jim, I think that the lady, the female pilot, we don't know what life is like for a female pilot. This is a new role for females to be Top Gun pilots, and she's living in a used to be male-dominated world, and she's breaking down boundaries just by piloting that F-18. And she's up there, she's doing her job, she's just as good as anybody else in the air, but she's a little more reserved, and I'm thinking that, well, perhaps, what kind of ridicule did Commander David Fravor get when he came down? He didn't get any ridicule, but when he came back and landed on the ship. But we don't know about this gal. She's just kind of laying back and kind of keeping quiet and keeping her identity quiet. Of course, all the guys from the ship, they know who she is. That's no secret. But I don't know what kind of world she lives in when she's living, she's serving in the United States or the Naval Air Force as a woman, as a Top Gun pilot. So I think she's doing the right thing by staying in the back a little bit until she really feels and sees what's going on here. Now I think about with the Phoenix Lights, okay? Lynn Keith-High, who everybody knows is the big spokeswoman for the Phoenix Lights, she laid back for a long time as Dr. X, and she didn't reveal her true identity until she was fully confident that she could move forward and open herself up and let the general public know who she was. So maybe this gal's going to do the same thing. Maybe this pilot is going to do the same thing until she sees how this is all received.
Yeah, she is still, I think, in the service, and she is in the teaching profession now. So I don't know if she has to wait until after she gets out to come forward a little bit more. Maybe she'll be a little bit more comfortable, or maybe it's just going to stay status quo. But like I said, I was very surprised and very pleased to see she did what she did. So there's that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think she's still active duty right now.
And there was one active duty pilot who talked a little bit about the East Coast case, and that was quite a surprise, seeing somebody that was Danny Aucoin, and that came up, I think, in episode 4. And he came forward, and Ryan Graves as well, who's no longer active duty, but he came forward as well and talked a little bit about that case. And that seems like it might. We don't have quite as many details as we do with the Nimitz case, and those are the only 2 that I know have come forward at this point. But yeah, obviously we'd like to see more, and there are some other cases too we'd like to know more about.
Well, this is Chris. It seems to me that these folks are getting a little more, well, it's strength in numbers, I guess was what I'm thinking, that these guys are being trailblazers and coming forward, and everybody else is looking around, well, I've got something to tell, but is it safe? Is the water safe to go in? And so I think they're waiting to see, maybe I suspect that maybe these folks are waiting to see what happens to these guys before they all jump in.
Yeah. Well, we had 4 Nimitz witnesses on a few weeks back. We had Kevin Day, Jason Voorhees, excuse me, not Jason Voorhees, Jason Turner, Gary Voorhees, and PJ Hughes. And yeah, I've got horror movies on the mind. Sorry about that. Gary Voorhees and Jason Turner. And we had them on, and it was all good as far as they were concerned. It was, it's been a very good experience for them coming forward and talking about what they know.
Frank, I'm really glad you brought them up. I'll tell you why, because I have a question I'd like to ask the entire panel to chime in on. And that is when we had them on our show, one of those folks actually said, when I asked them, do you think, my question was, this is not the exact question, but it was along the same lines of it. Do you think it was one of ours? Meaning, do you think that what you saw regarding this Tic Tac was our technology? And oddly, one of them said yes. And wanted to ask the panel, do you think that some of these unidentified objects in the sky that are moving at ungodly speeds and doing all these things that we assume are under the assumption that our technology isn't capable of, do you think that it's really our technology? Would maybe Rosa Robles, would you like to chime in on this topic?
I want to say no. I want to say that I think we would have seen more of it. The fact that these pilots have the looks on their faces that they do, it just, how do I explain this? It just, I think they're in too much shock. I don't think, I would think that they would have seen more or help me out here, guys, if you know what it is I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Okay, they just look too shocked.
Well, yeah, and that does bring up a good point, because you would think that pilots who seem to spend an awful lot of time in the sky would see more of this going on. But at the same time, if they don't have a need to know regarding classified projects that might appear to look like what we think ET craft might look like, then, that brings up that challenge right there. Would anybody else like to talk about that?
Well, this is Chris. I don't believe for a second that it's our technology. And I just kind of feel that if these are top secret tests and things that these folks are doing, why are they flying around right over the military
Exactly.
aircraft carriers and
That's
stuff?
That's a great point.
That does not jive.
Yeah.
It just doesn't jive.
Well, I've got a question for all of you, and I know you've done field investigations and you get witnesses coming in. Now, a lot of times these witnesses are going to come to you, and they've had this incredible experience on the one hand, yet on the other hand, folks with the background in the field, we've sort of seen this type of thing before. We've heard about these things, we're aware of them. And what would seem like a really unique, unusual experience, well, of course, it is for the individual who has it, but by the same token, there are a lot of other individuals who've had these experiences. And do you ever run up against that kind of thing when you're out interviewing witnesses where, the folks are beside themselves because they've seen something that really blows their mind, yet by the same token, we're into all this, so we know these kind of things do happen. So how do you handle that type of thing?
Well, this is Chris. I understand that by field investigating that, we get, just like you said, we get cases that are misidentified. Most people don't pay a whole lot of attention to earth science, astronomy, any of that kind of stuff, weather phenomena and all that. So when they see something, it really scares not everybody, but quite it could be a few folks. And so a lot of them it's just education, to educate them and stuff. And so that's kind of how I kind of treat it, as helping them learn about what's out there and offer some stuff for them to look into, and they go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Or sometimes the folks are very much the opposite way, and they go, no way, no how. I saw a flying saucer. You can't tell them any different. And it's like, okay, maybe you did, because I wasn't there either. Who knows? I mean, but it's to the folks, it's a big deal. To us, it may be just a regular lens flare or something like that. But to them, it's a big deal. And that's why, we help them become more familiar with the world that they're living in instead of looking at their phone.
So you get most of your cases explained, but about the ones that aren't explained, how many, Jim, I think, had mentioned that you get roughly one a day over the course of a year. And how many of those are you ending up scratching your heads over?
Well, there's been a few.
I think we've got about 12% that are unknowns, and that's across the world. So even if it was only 1%, still, what the heck is that? I mean, you have to still consider that there's something that we truly cannot identify. So it's still a big deal no matter what number you have, but 12% is a pretty good number. As far as these crafts that these guys were, that they were seeing and describing off of the show Unidentified, they've had it analyzed. They know what they're looking at. They had independent, civilians out there analyzing this. And when you're looking at the craft that they're calling the Go Fast, it's so fast that they've never seen anything that fast. And it has absolutely no heat signature. I don't think that we have the technology to do anything that has no heat signature. Our propulsion systems are loud and they're hot and they just don't jive with what they're seeing on this stuff. And then you look at the craft that they're calling the gimbal. Okay, that thing is rotating at an angle that it doesn't lose altitude. We don't have anything that can do that either. So these things are truly anomalous. And, like Chris Mellon said on here, these things are bizarre, they're incredible, and that makes them unacceptable. So when you call something unacceptable, this is a guy that has seen a lot of unacceptable stuff in his life. You got to really listen to that. This is unacceptable because it is unknown.
Yeah. This is Jim.
Go ahead. Thank you.
I just want to say that I think we'll all agree that the technology that we see every day, we're usually, it's been said that what you see today is, and what's really out there, the technology that the general public sees is about 50 years behind of what's really there. And this Tic Tac UFO and this technology we're dealing with, holy smokes, we're not going to have that, not even in 50 years. We do have a lot of classified and secret stuff. I'm sure we do. I hope we do. Let's put it that way. But I think that this technology that we're looking at is so wildly in advance of anything, like Stacey said, the propulsion systems right now. And even though we have all heard that anti-gravity exists, this is still some amazing stuff. So I don't think this is ours. So I'll go along with Chris and the others that, I agree this is it may not be extraterrestrial, but it certainly isn't anything the United States has right now.
This is Chris. The one thing I just kind of wanted to, because it occurred to me, not today, but as watching the show, it was a gimbal. Like Stacey was mentioning the gimbal and how it was rotating and doing all this stuff. I remembered watching that George Knapp, Bob Lazar thing not that long ago, that show of his, the movie that they just released, Area 51, I think it was called, or whatever. And Bob Lazar, I don't know if anybody remembers, but he was talking when he was describing to George about the craft and how it moves, was the same thing that gimbal was doing. No.
You're right, Chris.
Yep.
Yeah,
The rotation and sort of going bottom forward, that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. It's just kind of an interesting thought that occurred to me. That, hey, that's what Bob Lazar said.
Interesting. I wanted to bring up Ben Rich, and that is, there's been a few quotes attributed to him regarding anything you can imagine. We already know how to do, and then a few other quotes regarding how our technology might already have caught up with the kind of technology we think that ETs and their craft have the capability of being able to have. What is everybody's thoughts on that? Is what Ben Rich said just a utopia that's not possible, or is it a reality?
Well, that's a good point, Chant. I remember when Ben Rich said that, and he said we had the technology to take ET home. Well, wow. Okay. Think about this. We hear about the secret space program and all of that, and I was listening to a lecture the other day, and I can't recall the person's name, but the question was this: why does it take this? Why did it take the space shuttle 48 hours to get up to ISS when it took the Russians 4 hours to get there? The Russians would launch off their pads, and in 4 hours they'd be up there. The United States would launch off their pads, and it'd be 48 to 36 hours before we got there. What was going on? Okay, so what was going on during that span of time? And so to think that there isn't another program, maybe a covert or a black program going on, is a bit naive. So maybe Ben Rich was right on. You know, there's a lot of questions to be answered yet.
Well, even Steve Justice on the show, you know, I mean, he worked at Skunk Works. He's got a pretty good knowledge of what's going on out there. And he said, you know, he's pretty convinced that it's at least a highly advanced adversary that we're dealing with here. So that's maybe another term for, you know, extraterrestrial or whatever you want to put in there, but a highly advanced adversary? Yeah. That's pretty big stuff.
Shane here. I was going to comment too that, you know, TTSA, or ATIP rather, has been very careful to produce data and make statements that are, you know, very carefully done. So, for example, they say there are 5 attributes that this UFOs or this UAP are demonstrating that they feel indicate that it's not our own technology. So I can't remember all 5 off the top of my head, but I know one is the capability to travel in transmedium. In other words, they can be in space, they can be in our atmosphere, and they can be underwater with no apparent reconfiguration of those crafts. Well, that is way beyond our technology. You look at airplanes, there's 100 different designs for different purposes. Same with boats. We have very limited spacecraft. They look nothing alike. They don't function alike. Different materials, different designs. They're we just can't do that. So, you know, ultimately, you know, I may have egg on my face, assuming that these are not our own technology, but so far the data from those who are serious investigators about it are pointing in that direction. So, you know, I think politically what we're seeing, and the reason a lot of people are focusing on, oh, this could be our tech, is sort of that whole cognitive dissonance thing, is look, this is too fantastic to think about that there are others here in this technology. And this is part of that, you know, slow disclosure where you kind of drip feed and you build up to that. So again, what, where, and when versus, you know, who and why. And so I think that's why even TTSA is kind of presenting it that way. Well, we don't know what it is, but, you know, it could be China or Russia or someone else, knowing full well that that's not who it is, but you have to go there politically and just to acclimate people to the whole idea that there's some kind of technology beyond our understanding. Then the hard stuff's going to come later. So I think that's all connected.
Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Well, to add to that, Shane, I think about you know, the ability to travel transmedium. Think about the Shag Harbor event when they were tracking objects moving under the water at incredible speeds, near the speed of sound, if you were to believe some of the reports. And Stacey and I do a presentation that we give locally here, and Stacey mentions Shag Harbor in her presentation, and that was quite an incredible event. Now, I don't remember how long ago that was. Do you, Stacey?
I think it was 67.
Yeah.
64. 64.
64.
So this technology to travel fast underwater is nothing new. So, I think we're dealing with a completely a different group of people. I don't think it's us. I just don't.
Yep, I agree. It's a challenge, but if we're patient, let these things unfold as they need to, politically and emotionally and all those things, that more and more is going to come out. And yeah, the conclusion is going to get, the options for a conclusion are going to get narrower and narrower. And that's going to end up being the case.
Are we still all
Chant,
here?
yeah. Chant, you're talking and I can't hear you.
Oh, maybe that's a blessing.
Yeah, really?
The question I
I
have,
saw your lips moving and no
right?
sound was coming
You
out.
sound like my boyfriend. Thanks. Anyway, the question I have for the panel is this. The UFOs that are reported in the sky, let's just pretend that some of them are ET craft for a moment. How many years in advance do you think these ET craft are? Is it eons, millions of years, or 10,000 years ahead of our time? Thoughts on this?
This is Chris.
I think that's a good question, Chant. And that is like one of the ultimate questions. How advanced are they? We know that our species on this planet, our present understanding of how old our human race is, we're young in the universe. We're not very old. We're the new kids on the block, really. An advanced civilization could be easily 1 billion years older than us. So, who knows? Who knows? But I think what we're seeing technology that is easily 500 years in advance to us right now. That's my opinion.
Anyone else?
It's really an unknown. I don't think anyone knows. That's why we're all trying to study this subject and find out all the pieces of the puzzle and connect some dots. We just don't know.
Yeah, for all we know, they could be actually faster than we are. They might not even be older than we are. They might be younger than we are. They just got to this level technology-wise faster than we did. Who knows? We don't know. We have no way of knowing.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
This Unidentified series brought out some interesting commentary from the UFO community and also the general public regarding the topic of a threat in our skies. My understanding is Elizondo resigned after expressing to the government that these UAPs could pose a major threat to our national security, and not enough was being done to deal with them or address our potential vulnerabilities, as it says on the Unidentified Series History Channel's website. Do you think that this series actually caused people to have more fear? Is it a fear-based show regarding UFOs, so to speak? Thoughts on that?
Well,
Shane here
Yeah.
too. I don't think the program was, portraying it in a fear factor sort of way. I mean, definitely a threat is the language they're using, but remember, the intent of this is to motivate Congress to act. And remember, the holders of this information, the people who are pushing this forward, are the military. They are in the threat business, and threat equals dollars. And so, this is, again, part of, I think it was Chris Mellon who said, we are trying to work within a political system here to get this information and this topic moved forward. And I think that it's a reflection of that. Now, I will say personally, I don't think they're a threat. And I don't think so is because they haven't demonstrated that, at least that we know of. However, in principle, you have to acknowledge if you don't know about them, they could potentially be a threat. You just don't know. So, but again, I don't think this has been overly hyped, like, we got to do something because we're going to get invaded tomorrow. It isn't like that, but it is, look, if we're going to dedicate dollars and time and resources and, national treasure to this, there has to be a good and valid reason to do it. And a threat is always a good and valid reason, at least from the perspective of Congress and the military.
Thank you for.
Well,
Yes.
what I wanted to say is that I think it's a good idea. We don't know who they are. The bad guy could ride into town. I mean, you say, they've all been all through our life, they've never done anything. Well, things change, and they continue to change. And the guys with the black hat may ride into town one day, and we need to be prepared. For what it's worth, I don't think we would have a chance, but who knows? If it's like War of the Worlds, our bugs will kill them off.
Well, and that makes an interesting point when you look at episode 5, which was the atomic connection on this. There seems to be, this huge interest in our arsenal of nuclear weapons and where they're stored. But they have done nothing that we should be real fear-based on about this, right? It looks like they have been coming and looking at our stuff since about 1966. But in some instances, they shut down our arsenal. They have not melted it. They have not blown it up. They have not done anything like that we should be super fearful of. So you just have to wonder, are they coming to just check us out and see what we have? Because as Jim Mars mentioned once, the kids have found the matches, right?
Exactly.
And we started going nuclear. So
done anything yet.
Are they? Is it a show of strength? Are they showing us that we shouldn't be messing with this, or are they showing us that they can shut us down at any point they want? And are they doing that as a show of strength or as a show of protection for us? So you got to look at it two different ways. If they haven't blown us up by using our own weapons against us, so I tend to think that they're not going to. And thank God, maybe they're here to teach us we shouldn't be messing with this stuff. I don't know. But I don't want to go down the road of fear on this.
Yeah, I don't think we should.
Rosa, how do you feel? Do you think that we should be afraid of the UFO topic regarding UFOs being in our sky, if they're possibly ET-related craft? And also, do you think the Unidentified series came off in that manner?
I want to say no, maybe a small tentacle of it, maybe, but I want to agree with the rest of the panel because what are they waiting for? I believe that if they were a threat, they would have done something by now. I believe that they're on standby and they're just waiting for us to do something really stupid. And
we haven't done that yet?
We got a few slaps in the hand, I'm sure, but I really believe they're on standby. And like you guys have said, they've come and they've shut things down. And I believe it's a little bit of both. They're showing that we're here. I believe there's some sort of protection behind it. And the government doesn't seem to be afraid or alarmed by it. So they know something. And again, I believe they're waiting for us to do something even more stupid, if I may say.
I wanted to bring up an interesting quote that Rich Hoffman gave to me to read, to actually ask the panel about, and that is this. He said, here's another data point for your discussion, for your consideration. Lou Elizondo's work represents the first time a member of the U.S. intelligence community has come forward to speak coherently and scientifically about the phenomena. This will hopefully prompt other members of the intelligence community to include former directors of national intelligence and former directors of the Defense Intelligence Agency to lobby the U.S. Congress to take a bipartisan, I'm sorry, it's hard for me to say that word, thank you, stand in lifting the veil of secrecy on this subject and allow an open public-private study of this issue. What is everybody's opinion on that? And Shane, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think that if the United States government wanted to shut Lou down, they would. Okay? There's a lot of opinions down there at the Pentagon, but there's also a lot of power. And if they wanted to shut Lou and Chris Mellon and the rest of them down, I believe they could. Okay? So I think that this is being allowed to go forward. And the fact that the Tic Tac UFO, and there was a whole fleet of them, as the Princeton saw them on radar, a whole fleet of them. The ETs are letting themselves be seen. The United States government is letting this group go forward. You put two and two together here, and we can see disclosures coming. But we have to be curious. We have to be curious to find out what's going on. Same time, we need to be cautious. So I think that both controlling factors, the United States government or the world government, if you will, and ET themselves, and I'm calling them ETs because what else are we going to call them?
Interterrestrial. If they're underwater.
That's a good. Yeah, I like that. Interterrestrial. The unknowns. There's something that control those funny little objects out over the ocean, and they're actually allowing us to investigate them a little bit. I mean, they came up there and they played around with the F-18s, and they darted up and darted down, back down to the ocean, back up to the sky. So they were saying, "Hey, look at us! Look what we can do!" And I think they're waiting for that. Yeah. So I think everybody's just moving cautiously here, but they're moving. We're going forward. Mm-hmm.
This is Marianne. Just jumping on Jim's comments, jumping on his back on that, is that I believe other government officials probably want to come out and say something. I bet they were just a little too scared. They didn't want to lose their jobs or get ridiculed by the public or other government officials. And my thought is they've seen what Elizondo and Chris Mellon and Steve Justice has done with this, the show Unidentified, and speaking out of everything. And nothing's happened to them that we know of. And people are listening to them. They're taking them seriously. Like you said, the Italians come out. They wanted to be part of the show and bring out some of their investigations. I think the government officials that maybe want to come out, sit back and go, wow, okay, hey, that was great what they did. They came out. Hey, we want to come out. So I bet in the next, I don't know, hopefully few months, that other government officials will come out as positive information and give some of their information and share with the world.
This is Chris. I think that we have to, like Lou and those guys are doing with that, is that this is not just the United States issue. This is it's a global issue, and in order to have disclosure, I mean, globally, everybody needs to be on board in order. Like the Italians, for example, now getting on, and who knows who else will get on next. But I mean, there's no point in President Trump coming up and saying, we're being visited, if nobody else in the world's going to stand up unified in saying this. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. Wanted to also bring up, Shane, something that you touched on earlier in the show, and that was Congress. Can you envision a full congressional hearing specifically for military pilots who have had UAP encounters, Shane?
Yeah, I think it is possible. And I think that, it would be an important thing that would give confidence to the nation and everyone involved that, it's being taken seriously, but there is some transparency with it. And I agree with the fact that this is a topic that's going to have two levels, really. You're going to have secret, top secret, and then you'll have information that can be available to the general public and to scientists to study and so forth. It's I think it would be an important piece of the puzzle. I know it happened in the past in about 1968, and 5 or 6, scientists, including Stan Friedman and Jim McDonald and those guys, were able to do that. Didn't entirely move the meter at the time, but that was certainly sort of the peak of repression of the topic, let's say. And I think, in terms of Rich's question and intelligence people wanting to come out, just kind of echo what everyone said, is it's really looks to me like it's a tiered process, right? First, there's what they can say based on their NDAs and their security clearances. And then there's things that they would be comfortable saying, which is more personal for them. And I think everybody is affected by the whole concept of ridicule, and whether it's a threat to your career or what you think your family and friends will think of you. I mean, that affects everybody: intelligence agents, scientists, and MUFON investigators. Yeah, and I was just going to throw in on that topic of ridicule. I mean, I think we probably are all having the same experience, that it is greatly reduced. And again, 4 or 5 years ago when I started this whole thing, I didn't tell anybody, and I was nervous about it, including my career, my religion, some of my family, my friends. But I personally have experienced just the opposite. I mean, I cannot believe how accepting people are. And, I've got a MUFON shirt, and it says, on the back in big letters, report a UFO to MUFON.com. Wherever I go, I am not kidding, I've worn it, let's say 7, 8 different places, Home Depot, the D-backs football game, it doesn't matter, wherever I am, somebody stops me, they ask me about it, they want to share experience they had, or they're like, oh, I'm so curious, I saw that show, or I mean, this is unheard of. This would not have happened 5 or 10 years ago, and it's really amazing. So, and I think Frank, you mentioned earlier, like it or not, Ancient Aliens, that has had a huge impact on the way people, think differently now, about things. They're willing to accept alternatives to what the narrative that we've all been raised on, and I think that's gone a long way to help it. And then, of course, what's happening recently, when you have scientific data, credible people, bringing that data in a credible way, it is swaying people's opinion. And so, I welcome it, because the more that happens, yeah, it's easier on me and, my fellow MUFON investigators and so forth. But the fact is, more people will learn more information, and more information is good. So, I love how it's trending. Oh, yeah. Yep.
Before we wrap this up, go ahead, Stacey. Go ahead.
Oh, I've just got a question that I want to pose to everyone.
Yeah.
I just want to see what everyone thought about the very ending of episode 6, when Lou was asked the question by the reporter, can the public handle the truth? And he had this really big look of disgust on his face and just stood up and walked away. So what do you guys think about that? What's your take on that? What do you think that meant?
That's exactly it.
Yeah, I think that's a great question.
How I feel. I think Elizondo basically was just like, look, that's a stupid question. The people can handle it. They are waiting for the disclosure. They're waiting for more disclosure. Yes, we can handle it. Bring it on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I'm not going to dignify that question with an answer. That's kind of the way I saw it.
It's a great question, Stacey. Thank you for bringing that up. Before we wrap this up, I did have a question I wanted to ask the panel. Richard Haynes, retired NASA scientist, research scientist, and former chief of the Space Human Factors Office at Ames Research Center. I'm going to start a quote. He's actually talking in an interview, and then you'll see where I'm going with it in a moment. The quote is, "That's my experience. In general, you are exactly right. I share your view that it is extremely multidimensional, so much so that traditional science is really not up to the task. Now, that's an insight that has come slowly over the years, because I clung to science as a method, a technique to tease out these fine points and eventually get to the bottom of it. But the longer I'm looking at the evidence, the less I'm convinced that is the way to go. There certainly is part of the phenomena that will yield to science, but there is a whole other psychic or psychological dimension that not even psychology is going to come close to. I can see why a lot of my colleagues are in denial about this." He's talking about the phenomena that we all love to research here. How does everybody feel about the possibility of this phenomena being interdimensional?
I think science has no boundaries. Okay. And when we box ourselves in and we say that we already know everything about something, we're making a fool of ourselves. So good science is open-minded and ready to accept new ideas. So that's where I'm at with that. Certainly, I believe that there is other dimensional realms that we have yet to discover, and so I'm open to that. Absolutely.
I agree. This is Chris.
Okay.
I agree too.
And was that Marianne or Stacey?
That was Stacey.
And Marianne agrees also. I'm right up there.
Thank you. And Rosa, how do you feel about the possibility of an ET presence and even their craft being interdimensional? What are your thoughts on that?
Most definitely. Did anybody, I forget what year it was. I don't know if it was 2009. I think it took place in a suburb of California. Did anybody catch the footage that was caught on a lot of the homes, cameras of, could I say an orb, just a spot of light just overhead, and then something just mushroomed open, and the moment that this orb went right in the mushroom, there was a sort of explosion, and it was caught all on camera, and the reverberation of it was felt in that area. Did anybody happen or manage to catch that?
Wow, that sounds fascinating. Yeah, I know we would all love the link to that as soon as we end the show. If you could send that, that would be great. I would love to look at that.
That did it for me, most definitely. And it was caught purely by this guy's camera. And the explosion at the moment this thing opened up and it just warped right through it and it disappeared. I said, that's it. It's the real deal. So yes, I do believe.
Wonderful. Well, thank
Can
you
I say
all.
one last
Go
thing
ahead.
here?
Yes, Jim, please do.
Last night we sat down and we watched David Paulides' latest movie, Missing 411 Hunters, okay? The Hunted.
Yeah.
Have any of you seen that?
I have.
We
Yeah.
we love his work.
Well,
He's fantastic.
Yeah, when people just go missing into thin air,
Exactly.
these are documented cases. Okay, does that scream of interdimensional or multidimensional or of a science that we have yet to understand? David Maccabee's, or Bruce Maccabee's wife, I think her name's Jen. She would go hunting out in the woods, and she would see something that kind of looked like the predator. You know, the invisible creature up in the tree. Kind of looked like you were looking through water or something. So there's things out there, and there's a science out there, and I think that this whole thing that David Paulides is working with, Missing 411, where these people just go missing. Okay, just bam. Even the search dogs can't find them. It's just like somebody just takes them off the planet.
And the point that he mentioned was a lot of them are very avid hikers, hunters, and engineers, scientists that just disappear.
Yeah. So interdimensional, multidimensional, absolutely. That's my opinion.
Thank you for having brought him up. I wanted to read a little bit about him so folks know who he is and can look him up later. His name is David Paulides, and his last name is spelled Paulides. He's a former police detective who is now an investigator, writer known or unknown primarily for his self-published books, and dedicated to proving different phenomena regarding the topic of ufology and more. Wanted to mention that Phoenix MUFON looks like they have some wonderful speakers coming up. Stacey, do you mind letting us know who those speakers are? I'm on your website right now. There's quite a few well-known people that I know people would love to go see at your Phoenix MUFON meetings.
Yeah, we've got a really high caliber speaker coming in each month that we bring in. So this next month, it's going to be August 17th. We've got James Keenan coming in to talk, and he's a true hands-on researcher. He just got back from Central America, and he's going to be talking to us about all kinds of strange anomalies and some new research in the Mayans that he's done. And so he's going to have some great stuff. We've got Travis Walton coming up in December. We will have David Paulides coming back for the fourth time. That'll be in January of 2020. But yeah, we've got good speakers coming up. We've got a local astronomy professor speaking to us. He's going to give us the latest on some exoplanets. But all that information is on our website, and we touch on all kinds of things. It's not just UFOs, it's not just the nuts and bolts, but it is a lot of these things that are delving into that whole interdimensional realm. So anyone can go on there and look at www.phoenixmufon.com and find out who our upcoming speakers are. And our meetings are open to the public, so we welcome anyone to come if they want to. All the information's out there.
Yes, and you just had Dr. Irina Scott on with you. That was yesterday, and she is an absolutely delightful person. She's a serious UFO researcher who's done an extensive amount of research on this topic for decades. She did write a book called UFOs Today, 70 Years of Lies, Disinformation, and Government Cover-Up, Inside the Lightning Ball, Scientific Study of Lifelong UFO Experiencers, and The Sacred Corridor, Secrets Behind the Real Project Blue book. Books that I recommend anybody goes on Amazon to go look at and buy. We also have a few other speakers that are showing up at Phoenix MUFON, such as Dr. Kevin Healy on September 21st of this year, Don Schmidt, October 19th, Chase Kletsky, who we love very much. She's a wonderful person. She's going to be there November 16th. She's also going to be showing up for UFO Congress, which is going to be happening in September of this year. And I recommend everybody go to that. Before we leave today, I wanted to ask all of our wonderful people from the Phoenix MUFON team, do you plan on attending that event that is UFO Congress owned by Karen Berard and run also by her partner Alejandro Rojas?
Yes,
There.
Mary, yes, be there working it.
we don't
Yeah.
ever miss it. That's the best gig around.
Yeah, a never miss. That's it.
It'll be my first one.
Rosa, is that you?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, great. And Marianne, will you be attending that?
Oh, yes, I'll be helping out so for the whole conference. I'm looking forward to it.
Fantastic. You might
Yes,
just be
Phoenix
working with
MUFON will
Chase.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
Phoenix MUFON is going to have we will have a table there in the vendors area.
Yes, everybody, please go see Phoenix MUFON at UFO Congress. They will have a stand there, and my understanding is Chase actually volunteered to help out with the tickets. So you might be sitting right next to her, Marianne, at this conference.
Oh, yeah. I work with Chase. We did that last year, and she is an amazing, wonderful woman.
Yes.
And she's got such high energy. I love being with her. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a lot here. It's going to be a very exciting, wonderful Congress.
Yes, it is. And Chris, will you be attending that?
Yes, I will be.
Great. Well, I will see all of you there. International UFO Congress is on September 4th through September 8th at the Sheraton Phoenix downtown. Thank you so much for having joined us today. We thoroughly enjoyed having had the privilege and honor of interviewing all of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having us.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.